It was early morning when the city was still quiet, and only the sound of birds could be heard near the park. The streets were wet from last night's rain, and a thin fog floated over the ground. Anna walked quickly, holding her small bag close to her chest. She was on her way to work, the same path she took every day, the same corner where she stopped to buy tea from the little stall near the gate of the park. As always, she saw him there, the old man sitting on the same wooden bench under the large banyan tree. His white hair looked soft against the dark coat he wore even in summer, and his wrinkled hands slowly threw crumbs to the pigeons that circled around his feet. There was something peaceful about him, something that made people stop and stare for a moment, but then everyone moved on. Everyone except Anna. She had noticed him weeks ago. Every morning, no matter if it rained or the sun burned, he sat there. Sometimes he smiled at strangers passing by. Sometimes he just looked down at the ground as if lost in thought. Anna often wondered who he was. He looked too neat to be homeless, but too lonely to have family. She thought maybe he was just someone who liked silence. But that morning when she saw him struggling to open his umbrella in the sudden rain, her heart felt a pull. Without thinking, she ran toward him. "Let me help you, sir," she said softly, holding the umbrella over his head. The old man looked up, surprised. His eyes were a soft grey, full of kindness, but also sadness that she couldn't understand. "Thank you, my dear," he said in a voice that trembled like old paper. His hands shook as he tried to take the cup of tea she offered. "You'll catch a cold sitting here," Anna told him. He only smiled. "I've lived through colder days," he replied with a light chuckle. The rain grew heavier, and she stayed a few minutes longer, holding the umbrella while he fed the pigeons from a small paper bag. When it finally stopped, she handed him the rest of her tea and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." He nodded politely and she left, not realizing that this small act of kindness was about to change both of their lives. The next morning she saw him again. This time she brought an extra cup of tea and a piece of bread from the stall. "For you," she said shyly. He seemed surprised, but accepted it gratefully. "You don't have to, my dear," he said, but his eyes lit up as he took the cup. "It's fine. I pass here every day anyway," she smiled. From that day it became a quiet habit. Each morning Anna stopped by for a few minutes, bringing him breakfast, sometimes a newspaper, sometimes just her smile. He began to wait for her. When she was late, he looked down the street anxiously, tapping his walking stick. Days passed and they started to talk. His name was Mr. Robert. He told her he used to be a teacher, that he loved literature and birds. He spoke gently, always choosing his words carefully. But when Anna asked about his family, he always looked away. "They live far," he would say shortly, ending the topic. She didn't push, but she noticed the sadness that crossed his face each time. Sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, he pulled out a small photograph from his coat pocket and stared at it for a long time. One afternoon, Anna saw something that unsettled her. As Mr. Robert reached for his cup, the sleeve of his coat slipped back, revealing a dark bruise on his thin wrist. "What happened?" she asked quickly. He looked startled and covered it with his hand. "Oh, it's nothing," he said. "Just a small accident." But the way his eyes avoided hers told a different story. She wanted to ask again, but his voice changed suddenly, softer yet distant. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Someone I used to know long ago." Anna smiled, unsure what to say. She felt both warmth and worry in her heart. That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Why did a kind, polite man like Mr. Robert live alone? Why did he have bruises? Who was he waiting for every morning on that bench? Her mind filled with questions. Maybe he had a son who abandoned him. Maybe he lost his wife. Or maybe he was running from something. The thought made her uneasy, but also more determined to help. The next few days, she noticed more strange things. Mr. Robert sometimes looked behind him as if checking if someone followed. Once, when a black car slowed down near the park, he froze completely and turned pale. When the car drove away, he exhaled deeply, pretending nothing happened. Anna saw it all. She didn't ask. She only said, "Are you okay, sir?" He nodded quickly. Yes, just tired." But his trembling hands told another story. The city moved fast around them, people rushing, buses honking, children laughing. Yet in that small corner of the park, time seemed to pause for these two souls who had somehow found each other. Anna felt attached to him in a way she couldn't explain. He reminded her of her grandfather who passed away years ago. She wanted to protect him, to make sure he never sat in the rain again, never went hungry, never felt alone. But deep down she sensed there was more to him, something heavy that he carried like a shadow. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Mr. Robert looked at Anna and said quietly, "You have a good heart. Don't let this world change that." His eyes were moist, and for a second she thought he might cry. She smiled and said, "Then promise me you'll take care of yourself too." He laughed softly. "I'll try, my dear. I'll try." As she walked away, she turned once to look back. He was still sitting there, feeding the last of the pigeons, his head bowed. The light fell gently on him, making him look fragile yet peaceful. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something that might one day break that peace completely. And she was right. Something about this old man didn't add up. The next few weeks passed gently, like soft pages turning in an old book. Every morning, Anna's steps led her to the same park bench where Mr. Robert waited with his small bag of breadcrumbs. Their routine had become something both of them quietly depended on. Hannah didn't realize how much she looked forward to that short time each day, until one morning she woke up late and ran all the way there, worried she'd miss him. When she finally arrived, out of breath, he smiled and said, "I thought you forgot me today." She laughed softly. "Never." From then on, their conversations grew deeper. Anna told him about her small apartment, her job at a nearby bookstore, and her dream of opening her own one day. Mr. Robert listened carefully, never interrupting, his face lighting up whenever she spoke. He told her stories from his past, how he once taught young students, how he loved reading poetry, how he could name every bird that came to the park. But even as he spoke, there were moments when his voice trembled and he looked away, as if memories from long ago still hurt him. Sometimes, after she left, Anna turned back and saw him still sitting there, staring at the sky like he was waiting for someone to appear. Once she asked gently, "Do you have any family, Mr. Robert?" He smiled faintly. "Everyone has family, my dear, but not everyone has a home." She didn't understand what he meant, but his words stayed with her. One afternoon, Anna brought him a small box of cookies she baked herself. "You shouldn't spend money on me," he said, shaking his head. "It's not money, it's care," she replied with a playful grin. He chuckled and took one. "Then I'll accept it, but only if you share them with me." So they sat together, sharing cookies while the wind moved through the trees. For the first time in a long while, Mr. Robert laughed, a real warm laugh that made Anna's heart feel light. But even on happy days, something about him remained distant. He carried an old pocket watch, polished and shining, but never checked the time. Once he opened it slightly, and Anna saw a small photograph inside, a woman smiling, holding a little boy. Before she could ask, he snapped it shut quickly. His eyes went cloudy. "My past," he whispered, almost to himself. "It's better left where it belongs." Anna nodded silently. She didn't want to make him uncomfortable, but her curiosity grew stronger each day. Who was the woman? Who was the child? Why did a man with such kindness in his eyes live alone, feeding pigeons in a park every day? One day, when the sun was bright and the park full of life, Anna noticed Mr. Robert coughing badly. She rushed to bring him water, but he waved her off, saying he was fine. Still, she insisted he should see a doctor. "No doctors," he said firmly, his voice turning sharp for the first time. "I don't need anyone poking into my life." The sudden change in his tone startled her. He quickly looked sorry. "Forgive me, Anna. I didn't mean to sound harsh." She smiled gently, but deep down she felt something dark behind his refusal. A few days later, she decided to visit his house. He had once mentioned it was near the park, on a quiet street lined with old trees. She walked there in the evening, holding a basket of food. The house was small, old, and seemed forgotten by time. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the garden was overgrown. She knocked softly, but no one answered. She hesitated for a moment, then pushed the gate open. Through the dusty window, she could see him sitting inside, reading by a dim lamp. He looked so lonely that her heart ached. She left the basket by the door and quietly walked away. The next morning, he looked surprised when she came to the bench. "You left food at my door," he said with a knowing smile. She blushed a little. "I just wanted to make sure you ate properly." He nodded slowly. "You remind me of someone I once knew," he said. "Someone who cared too much." Their friendship deepened after that. People in the park started noticing them. The young woman and the old man who shared tea and laughter every morning. Some thought they were family. Anna didn't care what people said. She simply enjoyed his company. It gave her peace in a noisy world. But one morning, as they were talking, a stranger walked by and stared at Mr. Robert for a few seconds before leaving quickly. The old man's face turned pale. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up his cane. Anna noticed immediately. "Are you all right?" she asked. He forced a smile. "Yes, just an old man's nerves." But the way his eyes followed the stranger told another story. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. The image of the bruise on his hand, the locked pocket, the letter he once hid in his coat and now the fear in his eyes, all of it swirled in her mind. Who was Mr. Robert really? Was he hiding from someone, or had someone done him harm? Still, her heart refused to see him as anything other than good. "Maybe he's just gone through too much," she whispered to herself. Everyone has secrets. The next day she found him sitting quietly, staring at the empty sky. She sat beside him and said, "You know, even if the past hurts, it doesn't mean the future has to." He turned to her, eyes glistening. "You sound wise for your age." She smiled softly. "Maybe I just care too much." He chuckled and said, "Then don't stop. The world needs people like you." But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something he didn't say. A silent plea for forgiveness, or maybe for time that could never return. She wanted to ask what it was, but the words froze in her throat. The wind carried away the moment, leaving behind only a strange heaviness in the air. Something was coming. She could feel it, though she didn't know what. The days of peace in the park were slowly running out, and the truth, whatever it was waiting just around the corner. It was a cloudy afternoon when Anna decided to visit Mr. Robert earlier than usual. The air smelled of rain, and dark clouds gathered above the park. She carried a small container of soup she had cooked the night before. It was his favorite, warm vegetable soup with soft bread. But when she reached the park bench, something felt off. The pigeons were still there, but the bench was empty. Mr. Robert wasn't there. He was never late. In all the weeks she had known him, he had always been there first, waiting, smiling as soon as he saw her. Anna looked around. Maybe he was late, or maybe he had gone for a walk. But her heart started to worry. She checked the small path that led to his house. The old wooden gate was slightly open, swinging with the wind. She hesitated for a moment, then pushed it open slowly. The garden looked more untidy than before. Fallen leaves covered the steps, and the front door was half open. "Mr. Robert?" she called softly, stepping inside. No answer. The house was silent, except for the sound of an old clock ticking on the wall. Dust floated in the air. On the small table near the window, she saw 2 empty teacups and a plate with crumbs, as if someone had been there recently. Her heart beat faster. She moved deeper into the room. The air was cold, and the curtains swayed gently in the wind. Then she saw him, Mr. Robert, sitting in an old armchair, his head tilted slightly forward, eyes closed. For a moment she thought he was asleep. "Mr. Robert?" she said again, walking closer. He opened his eyes slowly and smiled faintly. "Anna, you came early today." Relieved, she placed the soup on the table. "You weren't at the park, so I got worried," she said. "You shouldn't leave the door open like that." He nodded weakly. "I must have forgotten," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She noticed he looked pale, more tired than usual. As she poured the soup into a bowl, her eyes fell on an old piece of paper lying on the floor near his chair. It looked like a letter, folded and worn. Without thinking, she bent down to pick it up. Her fingers brushed against the edge, and before she could stop herself, the letter opened slightly. The handwriting was shaky, the ink faded. The first line caught her eye. "Father, you know what you did. Don't ever contact us again." Her heart froze. The words felt heavy, filled with anger. She looked up at Mr. Robert, who was now staring at her quietly. For a second she panicked, thinking he had seen her reading. Quickly she folded the paper back and placed it on the table. But his gaze stayed on her. "Is something wrong, Anna?" he asked gently. She forced a smile. "No, nothing. I just saw the letter on the floor." He nodded slowly, eyes distant. "Old letters. They never bring peace," he murmured. Then he turned his face toward the window, looking at the grey sky. Anna didn't know what to say. She sat beside him, stirring the soup quietly. The clock ticked louder in the silence. After a while, she spoke softly. "You should rest, Mr. Robert, you don't look well." He smiled weakly. "I will, but tell me, Anna, do you believe people can change?" The question surprised her. "I think so," she said after a pause. "Everyone makes mistakes, but if they regret it, they deserve another chance." He looked at her carefully, eyes moist. "That's a kind thought," he said. "Maybe too kind." Then he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. She stayed a few more minutes, cleaning up the table and arranging things. When she picked up his coat from the chair, an envelope slipped out of the pocket. Her fingers trembled as she caught it. It looked old and fragile. On the front, a single word was written in neat handwriting. Daniel. Her mind filled with questions. Who was Daniel? His son? A friend? The letter on the floor had mentioned father. Was Daniel the one who wrote it? She wanted to ask. But when she looked at Mr. Robert, he seemed lost in thought, whispering to himself softly, words she couldn't hear. Before leaving, she placed the soup beside him and said, "Please eat something." He opened his eyes and smiled. "You worry too much." She smiled back, but her heart felt heavy. As she walked out of the old house, the wind blew stronger, and she heard the faint sound of thunder. It matched the storm inside her head. All through the evening, she couldn't stop thinking about the letter. Those words, "Don't ever contact us again," kept echoing in her mind. What had Mr. Robert done that his family cut him off completely? Could the gentle man she knew have done something terrible in the past? The thought frightened her, but she refused to believe it. "He's just a lonely old man," she whispered to herself. "People change. He's changed." That night she dreamed of him. In her dream, he was sitting on the park bench, holding the letter and crying as the pigeons flew away. When she tried to reach him, the bench was empty. She woke up sweating, her heart racing. Something about this wasn't right. The next morning she returned to the park earlier than usual, hoping to see him and ask about the letter, not to judge, just to understand. But when she arrived, he wasn't there. The bench was empty again. Instead, a small folded note was tucked under a stone where he usually sat. She picked it up, her hands trembling. It said, "Thank you for your kindness, Anna. Some things from the past cannot be fixed. Don't worry about me." Her eyes filled with tears. The handwriting was his. The message felt like goodbye. She looked around the park desperately, hoping to see him somewhere, but he was gone. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of his voice. "Do you believe people can change?" Anna stood there for a long time, holding the note tightly in her hand, not knowing that soon, very soon, the truth about Mr. Robert would walk right into her life, wearing a suit and carrying the answers she wasn't ready to hear. The next morning began quietly, but something in the air felt different. The sky was clear, yet there was a strange heaviness around the park, as if the calm was waiting to break. Anna sat on the same bench holding 2 cups of tea. She kept looking toward the path, expecting Mr. Robert to appear at any moment with his slow steps and gentle smile. But he didn't come. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Her heart began to race. She pulled out the small note he had left the day before and read it again. "Don't worry about me." Her fingers tightened around the paper. What did he mean by that? Did he leave town? Was he sick? She couldn't stop the thoughts from running wild. Finally, she stood up and decided to go to his house. The streets were quieter than usual. When she reached his gate, she noticed something odd. A black luxury car parked outside. It looked expensive and completely out of place in that old neighborhood. Her heart skipped a beat. She moved closer, pushing the gate open gently. The front door was already open. Inside, she could hear voices. "Mr. Robert?" she called softly, stepping into the small living room. There he was, sitting in his chair, his posture stiff, his hands trembling slightly. But he wasn't alone. Standing across from him was a young man tall and sharp-looking, wearing a grey suit. His expression was cold, his eyes filled with something between anger and pain. The young man turned as soon as he heard Anna's voice. "Who are you?" he demanded. Anna froze, startled by his tone. I'm a friend," she stammered. "I just came to check on him." Mr. Robert looked at her with tired eyes. "Anna," he said quietly, "please go home." The young man laughed bitterly. "Home? You still have the nerve to say that word?" He turned back to the old man, slamming a folder of papers onto the table. "You ruined our home, remember?" Anna's heart thudded in her chest. She looked from one to the other, completely lost. "What's going on?" she asked softly. The young man ignored her question. He took out some papers and threw them onto the table. "These are court documents," he said sharply. "Proof of everything you did. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up with your name attached to mine?" Mr. Robert's hands shook as he reached for the papers. "Daniel," he said in a low voice, "please don't do this." Anna blinked in shock. "Daniel?" she whispered. "The name from the envelope." It was him. The grandson. Daniel turned to her again. "You've been spending time with him?" he asked coldly. "Did he tell you who he really is? Or did he pretend to be some poor, lonely old man so you'd feel sorry for him?" "Stop," Mr. Robert said weakly. "She knows nothing about this. Leave her out of it." "Knows nothing." Daniel's voice rose. "You think you can just hide forever? You left my father to deal with your mistakes. You destroyed his life. And now you sit here pretending to be some kind soul-feeding pigeons." Anna stepped back, her hands trembling. What mistakes?" she asked. Mr. Robert closed his eyes. His voice was barely audible. "I made choices that cost me my family." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You stole from your own company, from your own son. You were a liar and a coward." Anna looked at Mr. Robert in disbelief. "That's not true, is it?" He looked at her with eyes full of sorrow. "It is," he whispered. "Everything he said is true." The room went silent except for the ticking of the old clock. Anna felt her heart break a little. The kind man she had helped every day, the man who smiled at birds and thanked her for every small kindness, had a past darker than she could imagine. But something didn't feel right. His voice wasn't defensive. It was filled with regret. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, looking down, "you saw me as a good man. I didn't want to lose that." Daniel crossed his arms. "You already lost everything, old man. I'm just here to make sure you don't cause any more trouble." He turned to Anna again. "You should leave. You have no idea what kind of man he really is." Anna didn't move. Her heart wanted to believe Mr. Robert wasn't as bad as Daniel claimed. She saw his shaking hands, the tears forming in his eyes. "People make mistakes," she said quietly. "So that doesn't mean they can't change." Daniel's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't know what he's done." "Then tell me," she said firmly. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "He betrayed his own business partner, his son, my father, signed documents behind his back, took all the money and disappeared when the company collapsed. My father spent years cleaning up his mess until it broke him completely." His voice cracked slightly. "He died believing his father was gone forever." Anna's heart dropped. She turned to Mr. Robert, who sat silently, tears rolling down his face. "I thought I was helping my family," he whispered. "I thought I could fix things. But I was wrong." Daniel looked at him coldly. "You weren't trying to fix anything. You ran away." The tension in the room was heavy, painful. Anna didn't know what to say. She could feel both of their pain, one filled with guilt, the other filled with anger. Finally, Daniel gathered the papers back into his folder. "I've said what I came to say," he muttered. "The lawyers will handle the rest." He turned toward the door. Before leaving, he paused. "You're lucky this young woman still thinks you're worth caring about." Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was unbearable. Mr. Robert sat motionless, staring at the empty space where his grandson had been. His breathing was heavy, his shoulders trembling. Anna stepped closer and placed a hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. He looked at her with broken eyes. "No," he whispered. "But I deserve this." Tears filled her eyes. "No one deserves to be alone." He gave a faint smile. "You're too kind, Anna, but some things, some mistakes, can never be forgiven." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Anna glanced toward the window, feeling a chill run through her. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. The peaceful days at the park were over. The truth had arrived, and it had changed everything. After Daniel left, the silence inside the small house felt heavy and cold. The ticking of the old wall clock was the only sound in the room. Anna stood still, her mind spinning with what she had just heard. The kind old man she had cared for, the one who smiled at pigeons and spoke softly about kindness, was not who she thought he was. He had a past, a dark one. Mr. Robert leaned back in his chair, his eyes closed, breathing slowly as if the argument had drained all his strength. Anna wanted to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there watching him, feeling a strange mix of sadness and confusion. Finally, he opened his eyes and said quietly, "Sit down." "Anna?" She pulled up a small wooden chair and sat across from him, her heart still beating fast. He looked at her with tired eyes. "I suppose I owe you the truth," he said. "You deserve to know who I really am." Anna nodded, her throat dry. "I don't want to judge you," she whispered. "I just want to understand." He gave a faint smile. "That's what makes you different," he said softly. "Most people only want to hear enough to hate." He took a deep breath and began. "Many years ago, I had everything. A wife who loved me, a son who respected me, and a company that was growing fast. People called me successful. But success can be dangerous when pride lives in your heart." Anna listened closely, her eyes never leaving his face. "I wanted more," he continued. "More money, more power, more control. I started taking risky deals behind my business partner's back. That partner was my own son." Anna's eyes widened. "He trusted me completely," Mr. Robert said, his voice trembling. "He believed I would guide him. But I betrayed that trust. I signed papers that shifted the company's assets under my name. I thought it was just a temporary move, that I'd fix it later. But things went wrong. The deal failed, the company collapsed, and my son was left to carry the blame. I ran, thinking I could protect him from the scandal by taking the blame quietly. But instead I destroyed everything." He paused and covered his face with his hands. "He hated me after that. My wife died without forgiving me. And Daniel," he sighed heavily. "He grew up believing I was a thief who abandoned them. And maybe he was right." Tears formed in Anna's eyes. "You made mistakes," she said gently. "But it sounds like you didn't mean to hurt them." "I meant to win," he replied bitterly. "And that's worse." She didn't know how to respond. The room felt filled with ghosts, of regret, of love lost, of years wasted. He looked at her again, eyes full of guilt. "I didn't come back to hide," he said. "I came back to see if there was still a chance to make things right. I found Daniel a few months ago, but he didn't want to see me. So I came here, this park. It was his favorite place as a boy. I thought maybe one day he'd pass by and forgive me. But forgiveness doesn't come so easily." Anna wiped her eyes. "Did you ever try to explain to him what really happened?" He shook his head. "Sometimes truth only makes pain worse. I thought silence was kinder, but I was wrong again." The old man looked toward the window. Outside, the wind had started to blow harder, carrying dry leaves across the street. "You see, Anna," he said softly, "people think time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time only hides them under layers of dust. The wound remains, waiting for someone to touch it again." Anna looked down at her hands. "But you've changed," she said. "You regret it. That must mean something." He gave a sad smile. "Regret is easy. Living with it, that's the real punishment." For a while they sat in silence. Then Anna asked quietly, "What will you do now?" "I don't know," he said. "Daniel's right to be angry. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to fix what can't be fixed." Anna leaned forward. "No, don't say that. You can't give up. Maybe you can't change the past, but you can still show him the man you are now. People see actions, not words." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes softening. "You remind me so much of my wife," he said finally. "She used to say the same thing. Always believed in people even when they didn't deserve it." Her heart ached for him. She reached out and gently placed her hand over his. His skin was cold and thin. "I'll still have a chance, Mr. Robert. Maybe not to fix everything, but to find peace." He smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. "Maybe that's all I should hope for now, peace." A knock suddenly echoed at the door. Anna turned, startled. Mr. Robert froze. The knock came again, louder this time. She walked over and opened it. It was Daniel. He stood there, his expression unreadable. The anger from earlier was gone, replaced by something quieter. Exhaustion, maybe sadness. He stepped inside without a word. "I shouldn't have shouted," he said, looking at his grandfather. "But you don't understand what it was like for us." Mr. Robert nodded. "You're right. I don't. Not fully. But I want to." Daniel looked at him for a long moment, then said, "I didn't come to argue. The lawyers are handling everything, but—" "I just wanted to ask one thing." Mr. Robert's voice was soft. "Anything? Why now?" Daniel asked. "Why come back after all these years?" The old man's lips trembled. "Because time ran out," he whispered. "And I wanted my family to know that I was sorry. Truly sorry, but before it was too late." Daniel's eyes flickered with emotion, but he said nothing. After a few seconds, he turned to leave again. Anna called out, "Wait." He stopped at the door. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened," she said gently. "It's about letting the pain stop controlling your life." Daniel looked at her silently, then at his grandfather. "I'll think about it," he said quietly, and left. Mr. Robert sighed deeply, tears running down his wrinkled cheeks. Anna sat beside him again. "You did what you could," she said softly. He nodded slowly. "I just hope he finds peace, even if I never do." Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft and endless, as if the sky itself was weeping for all the words that had come too late. The rain continued through the night. It tapped softly on the windows, filling the house with a steady rhythm that sounded almost like a heartbeat. Anna couldn't sleep. She sat by the small lamp in her room, replaying everything in her mind. Daniel's anger, Mr. Robert's pain, the truth that had turned everything upside down. She thought she knew him, the gentle old man with warm eyes and a kind smile, but now she wasn't sure what to feel. Part of her wanted to stay close to him, to help him through his sorrow. Yet another part whispered that she should step back. After all, he had lied to her, even if it was by silence. The next morning she walked to the park out of habit. The rain had stopped, and the ground glistened under the weak sunlight. The bench where they used to sit was empty. The pigeons were still there, pecking at the ground, waiting for crumbs that wouldn't come. The sight made her chest tighten. She sat down slowly, her mind lost in thought. For the first time, she noticed how quiet the park really was without Mr. Robert's gentle laughter. A voice broke the silence. "You still come here?" Anna turned around. It was Daniel. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking tired but calmer than before. "Yes," she said softly. "It feels strange without him." Daniel walked closer, his shoes crunching on the wet gravel. "He's at home," he said. "Didn't sleep much." "He's not well." Concern filled her face. "Is he sick?" Daniel shrugged. "He says it's nothing, but he looks weak. The doctor came this morning and said his heart isn't strong." Anna's heart sank. "I should go see him." Daniel hesitated. "You care about him a lot, don't you?" She looked at him, unsure how to answer. "He's not just an old man to me. He's someone who reminded me that kindness still matters." Daniel looked away, his expression softening for the first time. "You know, I used to think kindness was weakness," he said quietly. "When my father died, I promised myself I'd never trust people who hurt us. But seeing you with him, it made me wonder if maybe I've been wrong too." Anna's eyes glistened. "You're not wrong for being angry. But maybe it's time to stop carrying that anger everywhere. It's heavy." Daniel nodded slowly, as if her words struck something deep inside him. "Maybe," he said, "but letting go isn't easy." "No, it's not," Anna replied gently. "But sometimes forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself." He gave a small smile, the first real one she'd seen from him. "You sound like my grandmother," he said. "She used to say something similar." Anna smiled faintly. "Then she was a wise woman." They stood in silence for a while, listening to the rustle of leaves. Then Daniel sighed. "Come on, let's go check on him." Back at the house, Mr. Robert was sitting in his chair, staring out the window. His face looked pale, and there was a distant look in his eyes. When he saw them enter, a faint smile appeared on his lips. "Ah, my favorite people," he said weakly. "The sun's out today. You should be enjoying it instead of worrying about an old fool like me." Anna moved closer. "Don't say that. You need to rest." He chuckled softly. "Resting is all I've been doing lately. It gets boring after a while." Daniel sat across from him. his face serious but gentle. "The doctor says you need to take it easy," he said. Mr. Robert nodded. "Doctors always say that, but hearts don't break because of age, Daniel. They break because of memories." Daniel lowered his gaze, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I didn't mean to upset you yesterday," he said quietly. Mr. Robert looked surprised. "You didn't, you just told the truth." "I deserved every word." Anna could see the tension between them, the heavy wall of years that stood like a shadow in the room. She wished she could erase it, but she knew only they could do that. After a moment, Daniel said softly, "When I was little, Dad used to tell me stories about fishing trips with you. He never stopped missing you, you know. Even when he said he hated you, I could tell he didn't mean it." Mr. Robert's eyes filled with tears. "Your father was a better man than I ever was," he whispered. Daniel looked up. "He was a good man, yes, but he made mistakes too. Maybe not as big as yours, but he wasn't perfect." A sad smile crossed the old man's face. "No one is," he said. "Not even those who judge." For the first time, Daniel's eyes softened completely. "I don't want to keep hating you," he said, "but I don't know how to stop." "Start small," Mr. Robert said gently. "Start by sitting with me today. No talk about the past. Just be here." Daniel hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay." Anna smiled quietly, watching them. She went to make tea while the two men sat together in silence. It was awkward at first, but something in the air began to change. When she returned with the tea, she found Daniel showing his grandfather pictures on his phone, old family photos he had found in a dusty box. Mr. Robert's eyes glistened as he looked at each one. "That's your father," he whispered, touching the screen with trembling fingers. "He looks so much like you." Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, everyone says that." They shared a small laugh, fragile but real. For the first time, the house didn't feel so cold. Anna sat beside them, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in days. Maybe, she thought, forgiveness wasn't something that happened all at once. Maybe it started just like this, a quiet moment, a shared memory, a soft laugh after years of silence. Mr. Robert looked at her with grateful eyes. "Thank you, Anna," he said softly, "for staying when it would have been easier to leave." She smiled back. "You gave me hope when I didn't have much myself." "Maybe we both needed each other." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that's what kindness really is. Two broken souls helping each other heal." The clock ticked gently, the sunlight touching their faces through the window. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the beginning of something new, fragile, uncertain, but beautiful. The next few days passed quietly. The park was filled with the sound of birds again, and the air was cool and gentle. Every morning, Anna brought breakfast to Mr. Robert's house. Daniel started visiting too, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit and talk. The tension that once filled the air was fading, slowly, softly, like fog after sunrise. Mr. Robert seemed happier, though weaker. His smile had grown gentler, and his eyes, though tired, carried peace instead of pain. He would sit by the window for hours, watching children play outside, sometimes humming old songs under his breath. One morning, Anna arrived to find him sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Daniel was beside him, holding a photo album. They both looked up and smiled as she approached. "You're up early," Anna said cheerfully. Mr. Robert chuckled softly. "Old men don't sleep much. We prefer to spend what time we have left watching the world wake up." Anna smiled, trying to ignore the word left. She placed a small tray of tea and toast beside him. "Here, your favorite," she said gently. He took the cup with trembling hands. "You spoil me, Anna." Daniel smiled faintly. "She's been doing that since day one." Anna laughed. "Well, someone has to keep you both out of trouble." The three of them shared a light laugh, and for a moment, everything felt normal, simple, peaceful, warm. But behind the laughter, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about today. Mr. Robert's hands were colder than usual, his voice softer, slower. He looked at Daniel and said quietly, "I need to talk to you, son." Daniel's smile faded a little. "Sure, what is it?" Mr. Robert looked down at the photo album in his lap. "These pictures, they remind me of everything I lost, but they also remind me of everything I once had. I don't expect you to forgive me for what I did. I just want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Or your father." Daniel swallowed hard. "I know," he said softly. "I didn't believe it before, but I do now." Mr. Robert looked at him with watery eyes. You look so much like him. The same eyes, the same stubbornness. He smiled weakly. I hope you live a life better than mine. Make peace with the past, Daniel. Don't carry my mistakes. Daniel's voice cracked. You already did that, grandfather. You've carried it long enough for both of us. Mr. Robert reached out and took Daniel's hand. Then promise me something. Anything, Daniel whispered. Don't wait as long as I did to say you're sorry, or to forgive. Daniel nodded, tears forming in his eyes. I promise. Anna watched quietly, her heart heavy yet full. She could feel that this was the moment Mr. Robert had been waiting for, not forgiveness but peace. After a long pause, Mr. Robert looked at Anna and smiled. You've been my angel, Anna. You brought light into a life that was already fading. Anna blinked back tears. You were the light, Mr. Robert. You just forgot it was still there. He chuckled softly. You always say the right things. Daniel stood and gently placed the blanket tighter around his grandfather's shoulders. Rest a little, okay? I'll make lunch. Mr. Robert nodded. Go ahead. I'll sit here a while longer. Anna stayed beside him while Daniel went inside. The old man's eyes followed the sunlight as it filtered through the trees. You know, he said quietly, for a long time I thought my story was over. But meeting you, it gave me one last chapter, a good one. Anna felt her throat tighten. I'm glad I was part of it. He smiled faintly. You were the best part. They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the soft chirping of birds. Then his voice grew even quieter. Anna, can I ask you something? Of course, she said, turning toward him. When I'm gone, promise me you'll keep coming to the park. Feed the pigeons. Talk to people. Be kind. The world needs more people like you. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she nodded. I promise, he smiled, his eyes closing slowly. Good. That's all I needed to hear. The breeze picked up gently, carrying the scent of flowers through the air. His breathing slowed, soft and steady. Anna held his hand, her fingers trembling. Mr. Robert, she whispered. No answer. She squeezed his hand again, but it didn't move. The cup beside him trembled slightly in the wind. The blanket slipped from his shoulder. Her heart sank. No, she whispered. Please. Daniel came rushing out at the sound of her voice. He froze when he saw his grandfather, still and peaceful, a faint smile on his lips. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Daniel knelt beside him, his eyes filled with tears. He's gone, he whispered. Anna covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. Daniel placed his hand on his grandfather's shoulder and whispered, Thank you for coming back. They sat there together, holding on to the silence, the grief, and the peace that filled the air. Later that evening, the park bench was empty again, but something about it felt different now. Anna visited often, carrying a small bag of breadcrumbs. She would sit in the same spot, feeding the pigeons just like Mr. Robert once did. Sometimes Daniel joined her. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. One day a little boy came running up, curious about what she was doing. Anna smiled and handed him some crumbs. Here, she said softly. Feed them. They like gentle hands. The boy grinned and tossed a few crumbs, laughing as the birds gathered around. Anna watched him and smiled, a warm, peaceful smile. In that moment, she realized what Mr. Robert had truly taught her. Kindness doesn't end with one person. It lives on, in small actions, in gentle hearts, in memories that never fade. The camera would slowly zoom out, showing Anna on the bench, pigeons fluttering around her, sunlight pouring through the trees. A calm narrator's voice could end with, Sometimes the people we help end up helping us even more. And sometimes goodbye isn't the end. It's just the start of a kinder world.